Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We are going to be continuing on with a theme that we started a couple weeks ago called Old versus New. We're going to be checking out a song from a band's beginning of their career and then one towards the end of their career, seeing how a band has evolved over the course of their time writing music. We checked out some of the more popular selections in the poll, and today we're going to be looking at one of the lesser voted ones. This band is Eisregen. The song is from their 1998 album. It's called In der Grube, which I hope I pronounced properly, but after listening to that pronunciation about a dozen times, I kind of figured that I didn't have the muscle to properly pronounce that last word. But I think I got pretty close. I'm happy with it, and I don't think I butchered it as bad as I have butchered some bands in the past. Alright, so let's get into this, see what's going on here. Ooh, what? Yeah, very folky. Sort of a Renaissance feel going on. A very sparse mix. And a very rhythmic vocal. Aside from that one long held out note there, it very much reminded me of rap. That was a wild shift. Also really interesting how far down the guitars are against the acoustic instruments, volume-wise. Those shifts are so wild. Yeah, that's exactly halftime. Really interesting feel to do that back to back constantly. Yeah, so this band is a very strong dichotomy aspect to it. Yeah, so really, really cool stuff going on there in the vocals. Not anything I particularly enjoy, as I'm sure most longtime fans already knew. But I do like what's going on with it rhythmically and how that plays against some of the stuff going on in the music. Let's see. Let's start somewhere here. The song plays around a lot with dichotomy, with contrasting ideas back to back. Always two contrasting ideas. We have this overarching idea of, really harsh electric music with this very regal almost acoustic music going back to back. But even within the heavier electric stuff, there is still this idea of the harsh, overbearing ideas that we see in black metal with all of the attacks, the constant tremolo picking, and the fast drumming, um, running up against this idea of almost like an atmospheric work, moving with these longer, heavier tones that aren't so much overbearing, but still showcase a lot of that weight that they're getting in the black metal aspects. And we kind of bounce between all these different ideas moving back to back. And it's interesting that there's this duality both on a macro level and on a micro level, working between some of the larger ideas, like I said, the electronic versus the acoustic, and then even within the song on smaller ideas with the faster tempo black metal stuff and the slower tempo atmospheric ideas. Um, and it's usually, when we check out music like this, the duality's on a single layer. It might be a dynamic duality, it might be a width duality, moving between two ideas though, and just kind of sticking with those two ideas. But yeah, it's really cool that even when they decide to stick with the because the acoustic section doesn't really stick around too often. We have the intro, we have a little interlude in the middle, maybe two interludes, and then the outro. But the majority of the song is the metal. We have the overdriven guitar and the drum kit and the growling vocals or the harsh vocals. That's the core of the song. And even within there though, they decided to create a split, a divide in the styles of music that they're going to be utilizing. And that intrigues me. The duality is so essential, at least to this song, that it's done on two levels. So that's pretty cool. Um, I really like that acoustic mix though. The instruments they've chosen, I'm not sure what they are. Um, they all sound stringed to me, maybe harps or lutes or something, but I'm not going to try to name them specifically. I'm not getting any specific names based on the timbres, at least what I'm hearing. But I do love the sort of ambiance that those instruments create. They are still within the same key as the metal stuff, as we saw when they overlapped the two for a little bit. They weren't out of place, but it's not that heavy, overbearing, or even weightiness that we're getting out of the metal section. It's lighter. It has a bit of fun aspect to it. Um, just sort of a bit of levity that contrasts, once again, a bit of dichotomy with the overbearing weightiness, the gravity of the black metal and the atmospheric sections that they do within the electric areas. So once again, there's this dichotomy. It is such an integral aspect of this song, of light and dark, two different, two contrasting aspects to the music. Um, Looking at the music itself, though, a lot of the lines are not really strong melodic lines. We see some really nice melodies in the acoustic instruments, but when we look at the guitars, what they're doing, there really isn't a lot. There's held out notes, and then there is the the black metal version of held out notes, which is playing the same note for that same, full bar or two bars or whatever, just strumming as fast as you can while holding that note. Um, so there isn't really much in the idea of moving melodies. So the song really is carried by the atmosphere and the weight of the song and how they're playing and the onslaught of attacks. And as we learned a couple weeks ago, that is sonorism. That is when we create music by what the sounds can bring to the table, rather than looking at melody and harmony and musical theory in that aspect. Um, so that's really interesting how they also are creating a bit of dichotomy there, where I mentioned that the acoustic sections have melody and the electric sections really don't. It's really just about creating that environment, that atmosphere of oppression. Um, so yeah, just once again though, I'm not intentionally bringing up dichotomy at this point. I'm really not. I'm just falling into it because it is thrown everywhere in this song. This contrasting ideas. Now, one idea that definitely does not get contrasted with is the vocals. There's one style of vocal, it's utilized all throughout. It's utilized on top of the acoustics, it's utilized on top of the electrics, it's utilized on top of the section where we get acoustic and electric instruments. And that is that gnarly growl. I'm just going to call it a harsh. I'm going to call it a harsh vocal so that I'm not wrong. um, it is very difficult to parse, at least for me. I don't think that this is in English, so I have a translational issue already. I don't understand the words, but I don't even think if this was in English, I'd be able to understand it. And I'm not. I get it. I get why these type of vocals are utilized. Once again, it's for the way that they can be leveraged to alter and change and shape an atmosphere. This song would not have felt the same if it had clean vocals there. It's a textural thing, and it adds onto and complements, compounds with the other textures that we're getting, especially from the electric guitar and the harshness of the constant attacks in the drums. It fits in that shape, but not being able to understand the lyrics, I think, at least for me personally, does a bit of disservice to the song, because I can't. The music itself is not really telling much of a story. Like I said, there's not much melody there. It's all about the atmosphere and how the song feels to sit within. And honestly, all I got from that was, like I said, the oppressiveness, the weight that just comes with that black metal sound of having, 16 attacks every bar. There's nothing unique to the song, nothing that the notes selected are bringing to the table, at least for me. And if there's an entire album of this, that idea, that oppressiveness, is either one, going to wear on me, or two, get so played out that it becomes the norm and it doesn't sound as oppressive. I've mentioned in the past, contrast is very important. And they do contrast a bit here with those more atmospheric sections where they pull back and actually play half notes and whole notes where they were playing 16th notes. But if you don't contrast this type of music with something slower or softer or more melodic, it becomes the norm and it isn't as oppressive. Now, to me, listening to it in isolation and against other songs, like we checked out a lot of classic rock a couple weeks ago, and then over this weekend, we listened to some more proggy stuff. So this is being contrasted with stuff that is very different from it, and thus it stands out to me in this specific context. But within the album, it might lose that edge, and without the music saying anything, it's really just relying on the genre sounds, and I'm not sure that that's really going to hold at least my interest. Maybe there are people who really enjoy that, and if you are, that's fantastic. Um, but for me, I I just don't see how this song itself is saying anything that any other black metal song doesn't. But again, I'm missing context here. I'm missing those lyrics, and some of that, like I said, is the translational thing, the language barrier. But I also just can't understand the words. So yeah, I'm definitely missing some context here, and this also looks like it's a part of a larger spread of songs. I don't know if, I think that's Pest, Pest 3 in the title. I also see that there's a Pest 2 in the recommended, so maybe this is at least the end of a 3-part song. Maybe that also provide some context to it. I don't know. I'm missing information here. Is basically what I'm getting at. Um, so, but in the context of what I've listened to in this reaction, I'm sort of just not. I'm not understanding what this is bringing to the table. However, I do know we're looking at bands' early work, and maybe this was their first album doing this, and they were mostly just laying down the template for the genre before they were able to mature and grow and inject their own DNA into it. That's one of the cool things about doing this theme, is that we get to see how bands grow, and especially seeing how bands started, which I think is important, especially for people who want to be musicians, want to start bands. Um, we tend to idolize bands and albums where they have really solidified their sound and they've had time to grow into their sound. And so it's always really important to look at where bands have started, and sometimes to see how maybe in some ways they're a little more generic and have missed the mark in adding their own flair. And remember that that's usually where a lot of bands start, is just kind of, doing it, just making that first album, whether it's great or not, and allowing yourself to grow from there. You got to have a starting point. Now, speaking of rough starts, this mix is interesting. I looked for this band on Bandcamp because I'm doing that now with almost every band. We've had too many situations here, especially with black metal music, where the YouTube audio is just not up to snuff for the type of rough, gritty, dirty mixes that black metal tends to use, and I end up commenting negatively on the mix. So I did look for a better version. Now I know there's also a 2004 remaster, but on the flip side, with remasters, I've done a lot of remasters in the past, and a lot of fans always tell me, why are you doing remasters? So I picked the original this time. But this is what's going to happen when I pick an original, is I'm going to comment on the mix. And this mix is so weird. It is a very strange mix. Part of it, it almost feels amateurish, but at the same time, knowing what black metal is and how they tend to be mixed, and probably what this band was trying to emulate at the time, it's probably extremely intentional. It's just very strange for me. The vocals are mixed in the middle. They're not pushed way down like black metal does, but they're also not real high like you'd see in pop and radio rock. So it's a very interesting idea there. And I would say that they're actually utilizing a lot of unique characteristics and putting in some personality in the mix, at least with that decision. Also, the drums and guitars seem to be quieter than the acoustic instruments, really giving them a lot of spotlight, especially when the two sections were overlapping, and we heard the acoustic sections over the electric guitar and drums. Um, so yeah, the mix is just, and it's very sparse. This was 98. This was definitely after the Volume Wars, or man, I can't remember what that was called. I mentioned this a while ago, where we used to see a lot of dynamics in music, and then we just kind of stopped. No matter what, if it's a soft or a loud section, if you look at a mixer, they're going to be at the same decibel rating. And somebody, or maybe a couple people, were explaining to me in the comments on that video about something like the Volume Wars, or something like that, where producers were constantly trying to make songs louder and louder and louder, and now we've just kind of hit this point where you just stick at a decibel level, whether it's supposed to be a quiet, sparse section or not. Um, but I'm very used to modern music, especially something in 98, having this full width sound. Even in black metal, traditional black metal, a lot of the black metal we've listened to, um, it has an interesting mix as far as I'm concerned, with levels for individual instruments, but the sound itself is usually very full, and this is a very anemic sound. Um, I found myself going for the volume a couple of times just because it sounds so quiet and out of place. Um, it does not sound like a very natural metal mix to me. So there's actually a point where there could be a bit of personality being injected there, and trying to create their own unique sound within the black metal sort of blueprint, I guess you could say. Um, but yeah, this is an interesting starting point, and I'm very intrigued on where they're going to go from here. I really can't wait until tomorrow when we check out a newer song by them. I really hope they stuck with the style and it isn't something like we've checked before where they've drastically shifted over into a new genre and kind of gotten away from their roots a little bit. I want to see this band still implement some black metal ideas, even if they do push into maybe something that implements softer sections or more melody, or maybe gets a little proggier with their song structure. I still want to see those black metal elements and how they might have adapted their mix and their composition into that style to really solidify their take on the idea. That's what I'm looking for tomorrow when we revisit them with the song Leblos. All right, so those are my thoughts on Eisregen, in der Grube. I'm probably still being real bad about that pronunciation, but I'm trying my best. This is where you guys come in, though. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know if you enjoyed this or not, anything that stuck out to you, maybe bounced off of you. And if you have any context, especially for the mix, and maybe some time context. 98, I don't really have a strong grasp of what the black metal scene was like in 98. Maybe these guys were really kicking it off with a modern take on this idea. And the mix choices were part of that, or maybe the idea that it sounds a bit generic to me is just because they were kind of forerunnings on this. I don't know. This is where you guys can help me understand what's going on with this. When you're done commenting, you can head up to the description box. There's a link in there for Linktree. It's a very nifty menu. You go in there and it has links for Discord, Twitter, Patreon, all the stuff adjacent to the channel. If you want to do anything outside of just watching me, you want to join in conversations on Discord or whatever, that's the way to do it. Above that menu, above the description box, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, with the next song from this band. We'll look at something that's a bit newer from them and see how they have evolved and do a little bit of contrasting with where they came from with this track. All right, until next time, remember to be critical but not cynical of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.